Paulo Costa pulled out of his fight with Robert Whittaker. Illness. Decided he was ill. And I was looking at the calendar going, man, this is early, right? I mean, this is a long time. The fight's like a month or so away. On an injury is common that you would pull out this far in advance, but he said that he was ill. He wasn't feeling good. And I think he's got a trouble with the travel dates. I bring that to you as a defense of Paulo Costa. Before anybody says, how do you know you don't feel good 5 weeks early? I believe there's with the way he travels and has to go and check in, he's probably coming right down to the wire, and likely is why he had to pull out, but you still leave a situation of that's a main event fight against a former world champion, Robert Whittaker. Who do you put in? Well, if we're going to play this game, I'm going to play it from a different standpoint of not who should or who is eligible. I'm going to go with try to get into the mind of Sean Shelby. Who are you going to put in? And for me, there's only one guy. It's Kelvin Gastelum. And the reason I come to that conclusion is Robert Whittaker, first off, that's a tough night out. 5-round main event, that's a tough night out. It's going to take a special guy. Kelvin, by the way, who fought a month ago, only said one thing post-fight, which is, we got a couple of big matches coming up. If anything should happen, I am the guy. Call me and I will fill in. I'm back on track. I mean, it's one of those things where you're going to get a yes from Kelvin, and not to mention there's a history there. I was in Australia. I was there when Gastelum was supposed to fight Whittaker for the World Championship. If you guys remember that, that's when Whittaker the night before got rushed to the hospital. Remember he had that intestine problem? It was a very big deal, but that fight got canceled. It just seems as though there's a history, right? We seem to be living in a wave of you've got to get guys to agree now. That didn't used to be a thing. It used to be guys waited for their phone to ring and sprung out of their chair to tell Joe Silver, Dana White, yes. Now you got to get guys to agree. Okay, fine. In this little sissy world that we're going to live in and play by now, known as cage fighting, those guys have already agreed. Kelvin has not only agreed to this fight, he signed to do it, he trained for it, and he flew to Australia for it. Whittaker not only agreed to this fight, he signed for it, he trained for it, was going to stand his ground in his own backyard. It's one of these things where we know we can get them to agree. It's enough time. By the way, I don't know how the two of them just swept that like it never happened. It would seem as though they have very unfinished business with one another. And I think that, if you're going through the likely suspects, you're going to come to Jack Hermanson. Jack is probably owed a phone call in a situation like this, but then I would have to guess, would Jack take it? Is a month enough time? Right? I mean, this technically falls into short notice fight, even though this is going to be in April and I'm talking to you in March. I understand that, but that really is short notice, particularly with the travel and some of the restrictions due to the pandemic. I mean, you guys saw what just happened to Dan Hooker. 56 days. From bell to bell, 56 days. That's all because he lives in New Zealand and was trying to return to New Zealand. Now, I bring that to you without being an expert in the ports that these athletes are going to come from, but I do want to remind you that there is some different stuff here. So don't think you have 30 days to go lock down, train. You're going to jump on an airplane, fly to Vegas, and go do a fight. It's not like that now. So if you have 30 days, but you got 2 weeks of travel, by example, that means you have 2 weeks. Even if you're working out every day on the road, working out on the road is vastly different than training. Training in large part is about familiarity. That can be your gym, your partners, a geographical location, but it is largely about, I'm going to hit that bag right there this many times. I'm going to do that speed bag. I'm going to grab that jump rope and I'm going to get into that ring to spar. It's largely about that. And I only bring to you because don't forget what a training camp is, which is honing your skills and getting in shape. You're going to have byproducts of losing weight. You're going to have byproducts of studying, strategizing, coming up with your game plan. But there is not a time within training camp where there's any new skills or there's skill building. That is specifically a part that is left out of training camp. That is for what's known as the off season. Skill building is known for the off season. I bring that to you because whoever's taking Whittaker deserves some credit. Straight up. This is technically a short notice fight. It really is. Against a former champion of the world in a main event spot. Oh, and by the way, did I mention the champion of the world in the main event spot has known about it and has been preparing? Look, whoever steps up, Hermanson, Gastelum, Cannonier, just the short list, right? Whoever steps up is a stud and gets a lot of credit. But I'm going to put my opinion in now, Kelvin Gastelum. In all fairness, I have a very strong bias. I want it to be Kelvin Gastelum. I'm attempting to make the case for Kelvin Gastelum. But I think when I bring to you guys the backstory, which possibly you didn't know and possibly you forgot, or possibly you're right there with me, these two got unfinished business. That never got resolved. Whittaker and Gastelum, and that wasn't all moonlight and canoes. That wasn't Kelvin being Mr. Nice Guy like he always is. That was a different Kelvin who came out for that fight, which invoked a different response and reaction from Whittaker. Look, I mean, these two, why are we keeping them apart, particularly now? If we don't have to, why are we? Whittaker needs an opponent. I submit for you, Kelvin Gastelum.